Hello, my name's Barb. My husband Rob and I have been attending Windsor Road Baptist for about 3 years now. And before too long, I want to share my testimony with you and just let you know what God has done in my life. And in keeping with the theme that we've been doing, just the encounters that I've had with God in my life that have really changed my plans. I've kind of given up making plans because they keep changing. So this is really a story of God's ridiculous, chronic faithfulness through my life. I grew up in a Christian home with wonderful parents and a sometimes wonderful sister. And I was going to be a graphic artist. And so I majored in arts in high school, and then I needed to have abdominal surgery at 15, and so I guess that slowed me down enough that God could get a hold of me. And basically, I heard directly that I want you to be a doctor and I want you to be a missionary at one point. And so I said, all right, Lord, we'll do that then. So I dumped all my arts classes, I picked up all my science classes and all my prerequisites that I could then do medicine. And I thought, well, I'll get the missionary training part out of the way first. So I went to Bible college, which was supposed to be 1 year in between that and university, turned into 3 years. And then God decided to have encounters with me another way. I was going to be, the single Amazon doctor in the bush all by myself. And God had other plans. And so through a series of dreams, about 5 or 6 of them, all the same, God pointed out who he wanted me to marry. And after about the 4th or 5th, I said, okay, God, you have my attention, but I'm not going to chase him. I'm not going to be that scary stalker girl. If you want this, you need to bring him to me. So this was my friend Rob that I'd known for about 1.5 years by that point, and 1.5 years later we were married. So basically that changed my plans as well. After we got married, I got a job, we built a house, and life kind of kept on going. And eventually I was like, well, med school's not happening. And I buried it, I mourned it, and I left it be, and we were going to move on. And then one day, God used another means of getting my attention, and that was a pastor who preached on Kadesh. Now, Kadesh was when the children of Israel were wandering around for 40 years, and the last generation had died. And God brought them back to Kadesh and said, okay, take 2. Are you going to do it or not? And I heard God, just as surely as you're hearing me now, say, it's time. And I said, excuse me, Lord? He said, it's time for medicine. I said, are you sure? He said, yes. I said, well, that's okay. But you're going to have to convince Rob of this, because we're a team now. And a very strange passage came to mind. It's actually from Deuteronomy, and it's when a woman makes a vow, and she is either under her father or her husband, if that man in her life hears of it and decides that that's not okay, she's off the hook, he's on the hook. So I'm like, okay, God, I'll take that promise. And so on the way home from church that day, I said to Rob, I think God's calling me back to med school. He's like, are you sure? Yes. Okay, well, we'll do that then. My goodness. So we sold our house, I quit my job, and I went back to University of Alberta, and I started a science degree. So 5 years later, I graduated with that. And by this point, I had applied to Canadian medical schools 3 years running. And I'd always gotten close. The last time I had missed it by 20 spots. And so I was like, God, I don't understand what you're doing. And this is the 3rd way that God decided to talk to me. And he used his word. And in particular, 1 Corinthians 15:58, and it says, be steadfast, beloved, immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, because you know that in the Lord your work is not in vain. And it had felt like it was in vain at that point. Very expensive adventure. So out of frustration one day, I applied to a recruitment company called Austrek, and they bring Canadian students to Australian med schools. And they were having a conference in Calgary, which was about 3 hours from where I lived, and so I decided to go down there. I'd arrived early and went to the hotel reception, and I said, I'm here for this Austrek conference for UQ, who's doing a presentation. And they said, oh yes, they've already finished, they've already met, they're doing interviews. I'm like, oh gee. So I figured I might as well stick around for the presentation later. And in Canada, the interviews all happen at once, and then you find out if you've been accepted or not. And so I figured if they'd had their interviews and I didn't get one, well, that chance was gone then too. So I sat in this room, enraged actually with God, but started to think about what had happened since I had had my last rejection from the U of A med school. And first thing my dad said when he found out about this was, oh, that's very much like when Abraham had to sacrifice Isaac. I'm like, thanks, Dad, not relevant. And within 2 weeks, 2 other people had brought up the same story. So I'm sitting there very angry, crying, broke, and not knowing what to do next. And so I started ruminating on this story, and I said, okay, God, again, you have my attention. And thought about that story and realized that Abraham wanted that boy. He wanted him so bad. God wanted Abraham to have that boy. He wanted it so bad. But more than that, God wanted to have the relationship with Abraham. And so again, God came to me very directly and said, do you want the promise or do you want me? And we fought for a while. I do that. And finally, I decided that if medicine's not going to work out, we'll find something else to do. I want that relationship with God. I want to follow him, even if it's not where I thought he was going. Not even half an hour later, one of the deans of UQ Med came through the door and said, oh, you were on the next list to be interviewed. Well, why don't we do it right now? Okay, so we didn't even have time to get scared about that. And at the end of it, he says, well, we'll see you in February. Oh my goodness. So God has very, very distinctly, directly had encounters with me that have led me to this place. I'm now at the end of my 4 years of med school. I have my major exam next Saturday that will finish it. And I can't believe we're at the end of the 9 years of training, and we're at the beginning of starting this medical career. God has made it happen. Again, he's been ridiculously, chronically faithful to us through financial troubles, through just logistical problems of moving continents, dealing with families and whatnot. And God was so right in pairing me up with that man. He has been my Samwise Gamgee. He can't carry my burden, but he does carry me, and that's been fantastic. So in the end, I have a job next year in Mackay, Queensland, so we're going to be unfortunately leaving Windsor Road. And what happens after that, I don't know. I have no idea. My experiences with God have just told me to keep the camels packed. You never know where you're going to end up. But he is faithful, and he will do it. So again, be open. God will talk to you in various ways. Like I said, he's used his people in his church. He's used his word with me, and he's talked to me directly. And I am so grateful to be friends with God. That's something I desire more than anything else. Thank you.